Turn up your radio. It's time for DeLorean Talk with your host, Dave Tavers.
Hi, and thanks for joining another episode of DeLorean Talk. This is Dave Tavers, VIN 10515 from Southern California, part of the Orange County DeLorean Club. As always, thank you guys for joining. Thanks for the messages, for the emails. Really appreciate it. I'd love to do more. I know there's some of you out there that have sent me emails saying, I want to be on the show. I'm not ignoring you. I will get to you. Life is busy. Everybody has those challenges. So it's a matter of just setting aside the time and getting people to get on the same schedule. So we'll get there. I am sitting in my DeLorean on the exact spot where the DeLorean time machine rolled out of Doc Brown's van at Puente Hills Mall in Brea, California, or City of Industry, depending on who you ask. Because turns out that Mark Woudsma, who lives in San Francisco Bay Area, is down here in LA for work, and we decided we'd do an episode here in my DeLorean. Hey, Mark.
How's it going, Dave?
Great. Thanks so much for joining. Mark, if you don't know, has what a lot of people call the Mongoose car. It's a beautiful, beautiful, super customized DeLorean, and we're going to get into that. But I met him actually almost exactly a year ago. We looked up the photo. I was up in the Bay Area last year for Thanksgiving, and turned out that Mark was pretty close by my friend, where I was staying with my friend, and said, "Hey, can I come by?" Went over there and said hi and chit-chatted, and we've been in touch for the last year. So now he's down here in LA visiting, or down here for work, and we're going to do an episode of DeLorean Talk.
Yeah, it's good to get together finally and meet up and have dinner and do the talk tonight. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
And it's a real pleasure. And thanks for all you're doing, Dave, for the community. Much appreciated from us owners for your enthusiasm and your support, and for doing these talks. I really enjoy listening to them myself.
Thanks.
So, glad to be here.
Thanks. Well, why don't you do the typical introduction? Introduce yourself, where you're from, what your current VIN number is, and give a pitch for the Northern California DeLorean Club.
Sure. Yeah, Mark Woudsma. I live in San Jose, California, and my VIN is 2855. As you said, that's the Mongoose car. It's an August 81 build, and it was purchased in Stockton, California. And I am a member of the NorCal DeLorean Club, as you mentioned. And I have been a member of the NorCal DeLorean Club since 2007, which is when I purchased my first car.
Yeah, and your first car, I have the note that your VIN was 4920. Do you know what happened to that car after you sold it? Where it went?
I do. I owned that car for 3 years. I sold it in 2010. It went to a gentleman who lived in Seattle. He enjoyed it there in Seattle for a few years, and then moved back to New Zealand, where he had lived prior, and called me up one day and said, "I'm moving to New Zealand and I'm taking the car with me."
Oh, awesome.
So it went to New Zealand, and I don't know how many are there right now, but I'm sure there's not many. But just in the last year, we've kept in touch a little bit, and just in the last year, I know he sold it to another guy who's enjoying it now, still in New Zealand.
In New Zealand. That's awesome. That's cool that you've kept in touch, because I talked to a lot of other people who don't keep in touch with the person they buy the car from, or who they sell it to afterwards. They still like the community, but that's cool that you kept in touch. So you had your first car for 3 years, and then you sold it in 2010. You bought your current car in just last year, right?
Yeah, in August of last year.
August. So you went for 7+ years without a DeLorean.
Yep. So the story behind that was let me backtrack a bit. The DeLorean has always been a car I liked as a kid, and always wanted to own. And at that time, I was like ready to buy something fun. I had been driving Volkswagens around for many years, tuning them, doing the club scene, going to shows, and I wanted something fun that wasn't a daily driver. So the DeLorean I purchased then was my first classic car. So my first foray into an older classic car that needed some restoration work, and I wanted it to be a DeLorean. So I bought that car and joined the club and started working on it and doing things with it. And then I got tired of it at the time. I got tired of some of the issues with the car, and I got frustrated over some things, and I decided that I was going to let it go and move on to something else. I actually started driving Porsches after that because I wanted something a little bit more sporty and faster. And now I look back on that time and I realize I tried to make that DeLorean something it wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I take it now as a learning experience. So I was trying to make the car, you know, more sporty and fun in the hills and everything, and it really wasn't the right car for that.
The DeLorean is totally a cruising car. It's not a speed demon.
Right. I have a different approach now to my new car.
Well, it's been long enough in between.
Yeah, and I've had a couple different sports cars and other brands in between, so I've gotten through that phase, and now I'm back.
When you had the first car, you said that was also up in the Bay Area? And you were part of the NorCal Club then?
Yep.
Was it different back then with regard to the club? Like, you were working on the car, but was the community the same as it is now back then in 2007, 8, 9?
Yeah, I think so. There's in the Bay Area, we got a pretty strong ownership group, both new and old. And there's a couple original owners, which is really great. Everybody was super welcoming into the group when I joined, and they're still my friends today, even from them.
Nice.
And they would be even if I hadn't bought another DeLorean.
Sure.
And I think
wanting
to buy another DeLorean was part of the reason. You know, having those friendships and the club organization is, you know, one of the reasons why owning a DeLorean is so cool.
Well, part of that also is that you're friendly and outgoing and helpful. You're a car guy already, so you know car stuff, and it sounds like if you were doing all that work to your first DeLorean, you probably knew a lot about the car.
Well, I was in a learning phase, so there were people then helping me, and then things that I did on that car, then I would turn around and help others do on theirs.
Yeah.
Even then, and I do that today too. I like to share what I've learned, you know, and the enthusiasm behind it. When new owners come in and they have questions, if I've done it, I'll raise my hand and offer to help. So
awesome. And now I'm West Coast. I know there's tons of DeLoreans on the Midwest, East Coast, but I'm now getting to know a lot of the leaders of the West Coast DeLoreans. I consider you one of the leaders. You guys don't have a formal structure like PNDC does, but you're pretty active and you're organizing stuff. You guys are now you're also going to do a Dinner with the D's monthly dinner meetup event up there, right? Or you've been doing it?
Yeah, I think that's something I'd like to start doing in the NorCal area as a spin-off of what you've been doing down here in Orange County. Recently, I started doing events, not just me, but some of the other key members in the club, hosting events on weeknights to try to bring together the members every month. Pick a place. The Bay Area is pretty spread out, so we move around from the peninsula to the San Francisco area to the San Jose South Bay Area all the way out to Sacramento. Doing just a quick informal weekday meetup. A lot of us are busy on the weekends. You know, we have families, school, soccer practice, or you may have to work. You know, if you got a type of job, you got to work the weekends. You can never get out to these cars and coffee events and so on. Doing a weeknight meetup, even though it's short, gives you that opportunity.
Yeah.
So
good. Well, and you guys have a good group of people up there that are pretty active. But you are spread out a bit, kind of like in Southern California. Southern California is huge, so we've got very clear delineation between Los Angeles, Orange County, and San Diego, and then there's Riverside. You guys, you have South Bay and Peninsula and all that, but it's too hard. I think it would be too hard to break you guys up into separate groups. For SoCal, it's pretty clear to do LA, Orange County, San Diego, Riverside. So I hopefully you guys get some more people. If anybody out there is listening and you know a DeLorean anywhere in the Bay Area, if they're not already involved with the NorCal Club, check out the website, which is what?
ncdmc.org.
ncdmc.org.
Northern California DeLorean Motor Club. And of course on Facebook, NorCal DeLorean.
Awesome.
I'd say Facebook is probably one of our most active places right now. If you're on Facebook, you can join the group. And we post events there, of course, and just regular chit-chat. And, you know, if someone needs a hand or they got an issue, they post a picture up, or if they just bought a new car, you know, things like that.
Awesome. So you had your first car for 3 years. You just bought the new car, the Mongoose car, as some people are calling it. the first time I met you, I got to see the car and you'd only had it a month or two. It is beautiful, but I really love your connection to it because that car meant something to you a long time before you got it.
So the car is unique, but it's been unique to me too, because for me, the car was my DeLorean introduction. You know, as a kid, I was probably 10 at the time. My brother had a car magazine, and there was this DeLorean in it. And the magazine was Sports Car Graphic of February 1984. And there was an article about this custom DeLorean in there and a photograph. And the photograph in front of Coca-Cola trucks on the side of the street. And that image always stuck in my head. I used to draw this car in high school when I should have been paying attention in math class and things like that. But since this car was probably the first time I had seen a DeLorean in a magazine or in a photo, I was always like, man, that's a cool looking car. So it always stuck with me in the back of my head, just the look, the stance, the 5 years ago would have remembered. I was like, oh, could I draw that today? Probably not, but it was always there. You know, it was always my, like I said, my introduction, and probably part of the reason why I liked the DeLorean car and why I bought the first one in 2007. So that car obviously is the Mongoose DeLorean, as it's known today. I always wondered where it was, what happened to it. You know, did it still exist? Had it been crashed, or had it been left in a field somewhere? You know, what happened to it? Because the only pictures that really existed were this magazine
ad.
You know, there was never a photo of it on the old DMC Talk, or you Google it online, you never find anything. And then earlier last year, a photo of it showed up on the internet, and I saw that photo, and I went, that's that car. And I remember sitting on the couch. I remember the exact moment it happened. I'm sitting on the couch, I think it was Facebook, and I'm, doing my normal thing in an evening, scrolling through Facebook, and I see it, and I'm like, holy cow. And I hold the computer up to my wife, and I show her the screen. I'm like, see this? If I can buy this car, I'm buying this car. And she looks at me and kind of goes, oh, really? Well, a couple months later, I did buy it.
And it was just a couple months later.
Well, it was a couple months, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to track down where the car was, and it wasn't for sale at the time, but that came to be.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I think it's such an awesome story that the first time you saw a picture of a DeLorean 30 years ago, or how long ago?
1984, so 34 years.
34 years ago, the first picture you see of that specific car, and now you bought that car.
Yeah.
That is the amazing thing to me.
Yeah, it's still amazing to me too. I walk in my garage, open the door, and it's sitting there, and I see the orange stripes down the side and the DeLorean script down the bottom of the door, which is hand painted, by the way, and stenciled. I'm still amazed when I walk in and I see the car sitting there.
Yeah, if you don't know the car that we're talking about, it's a half painted DeLorean. Lots of stainless is still exposed, but there's some really cool, and this is not new vinyl graphics. This is really a hand painted job from 1982, right? 83?
Yeah, so I'll go over, if you like, the external. So the rub strips on the side of the car have been removed. From that line down on the body, it's all gloss black paint. Above that is like a graphite paint, then a black stripe, then a red stripe, then an orange stripe. So with about 3 to 4 inches below the window line, from there on up, it's all stainless. So most of the roof is stainless, the hood is stainless, but only the tops of the fenders, the top edge of the door, and a little bit on the rear. So it's truly unique, I think, because I've never seen another DeLorean that's half painted.
Right, that's half.
You've either seen them all painted or never painted.
Right.
But never half like this.
Yep.
The treatment, the way the graphic design was done, and it is all paint basically from that orange stripe down, is the lines start at the front on the fascia. It wraps around from the headlight and it runs down the side of the body. It gets fatter as it goes, then wraps up over the roof, and then it comes back down and it gets fatter as it goes back. So it gives an impression of the car being a really wedge.
A wedge, yeah, very sleek.
Yeah.
Definitely go look at DeLoreanTalk.com onto the episode page, because we'll have a whole bunch of pictures up there, and Mark has a lot of great photos. It's a sincerely beautiful car. I tend to be one of those that really, I'm not a fan of the painted DeLoreans, but this is beautiful. And definitely unique. So check out the photos.
It's also very period correct.
Yeah.
Having been done, it's very 80s look, and
well, there's a reason for that.
People will stop me at wherever I am at a car show, whatever, and like, oh, did you do that? And I'm like, no, this was done in 1983. It's authentic. It's all real. I think it's like Emron paint, so it's the stuff you can't get anymore. It's nice and durable.
Well, and there's a reason why it's called the Mongoose car, and there's a reason why it's period, quote unquote, period correct.
That's correct. Yeah.
What is that?
The reason the car is the way it is because this was a creation of Mr. Skip Hess, the owner of Mongoose Bicycles, a brand I'm sure many of us listeners are aware of and have heard of. The Right Age. I know BMX Products, probably the creator of the BMX bike as we know it today. Yep. Skip was a car guy. He was also into racing and drag racing, and he liked interesting cars. He didn't want to have the run-of-the-mill thing. So a DeLorean was a car he liked. He liked the story behind it and the design of the car, but he didn't want a regular DeLorean. He wanted something different. Skip was also a Pantera guy, a De Tomaso Pantera guy, and had a nice customized Pantera that became quite famous as well. So Skip commissioned this DeLorean to be built back in the 80s.
Or customized.
Customized, yeah. So it was customized by a hot rod shop down here in LA, at a shop in Hawaiian Gardens, by a hot rod builder who's, I think, quite legendary in the scene, the hot rod scene. His name is Fat Jack Robinson.
Fat Jack.
Yep. So he built the car. There was another company, another gentleman involved who I think brokered the deal. His name's Gary Hall, and his business was Hall Pantera. And that's a Pantera company that's also based down here in LA, which is still in existence today, although they're no longer customizing and building cars. They're just selling parts nowadays. But there's still an active business in the industry. So Hal Pantera brokered the deal, hired the company to build it, Fat Jack. The car was purchased brand new by Skip in '82 in Stockton, California, and basically driven or transported, I'm not sure exactly, directly to the hot rod shop. So it was a brand new car when it was built, and it took them about 13 months to complete the project at a cost of $12,000 in 1983.
In 83. At first, you might think, well, if you have not seen the car, you might go, $12,000 to paint the car, but that is not what this car is.
Yeah, I think the paint part of it was about $3,000.
Right, and it's beautiful, but again, there is some crazy stuff on this car. Like I said, when I met Mark for the first time last year, I got to see the car up close, and he was pointing out some of the stuff. The biggest thing that still stands out of my mind, he pushed it out of the garage, backed it out of the garage, and when I laid down on my stomach. If you make a fist, I couldn't put my fist between the ground and the frame of the car. It is freaking ridiculously low.
Yeah, it's really low.
It was super low.
It was. I've raised it a little bit just for driving around today's bumpy roads and parking lots and driveways and things, so I don't do any damage.
So talk about specifically the stuff that he did, because you don't have stock rims anymore in the car.
That's right.
And this is part of that $12,000 price tag from '83.
Yep.
Huge changes to the car.
Yeah, so not only is the exterior changes significant, but also the suspension rework was quite significant. And I had a conversation with the son of the builder a couple months back over the phone. And basically he told me they did it the hot rod style, where they would take the car, lift it up, take the wheels, cut all the suspension off, get the wheels and tires they wanted to put on the car, put them underneath, just kind of hold them there, and then, build an all-new suspension around that so they could get the stance they want. And that's basically what they did. The other thing that was amazing, that the way it was done, was they never actually took the body off the frame. They did all the customization that I'll explain with the body still there, which is quite amazing because there's a lot of welding and cutting and things like that. So, in a nutshell, it's got really wide rear tires. They're 12 inches wide, and they fit actually quite well under the tubs. I'm running a 295 width tire on a 15-inch by 10 wheel in the rear, and a 235 on a 15 by 8 in the front. And in order to fit those wheels with the offsets, which are quite deep, the rear suspension's been narrowed 6 inches, and the front suspension's been narrowed about 4 inches.
That's crazy.
So in order to achieve that, they handmade all new suspension parts. So it's still using all the same original geometry of DeLorean. So it's still a trailing arm with upper and lower links in the rear, and it's still an upper A arm with a single link in the front, and located by the sway bar. But the sway bar's custom because obviously everything's narrower. So the points where they attach to the control arm is narrower. The lower control arms are a modified factory arm, boxed in on the bottom but shortened. The upper A arms on the front are handmade, now adjustable, so I can adjust for both camber and caster.
That's something you added, right?
No, that's
that was
handmade way from them. So they made the car adjustable in ways the factory DeLorean suspension is not. The factory suspension is only adjustable basically in tow, in the front and the rear.
Yeah.
And now I have adjustability in all directions on all 4 wheels. The rear with the narrow track, the trailing arms the angles are changed so that the car can be aligned. There's really big spacers in the front. Still has the tab bolts up at the front, but everything is a lot closer to the body. I actually have a little bit of rubbing going on. I got to correct on the rear where they're so close up to the body, the fiberglass body now. I'm kind of rubbing.
In fact, there's some areas that the body's not there anymore.
Yeah, I'll get to that too.
Oh, sorry.
Right up at the front, the springs and shocks have been changed, and they went to coil-over suspension, front and rear, and they put on like a 13-inch tall, which is common in the hot rod industry, I think, off a Jaguar, which is just a threaded body shock. It was a Coney Sport with a 10-inch tall spring, and in order to install those on the front, they basically cut the box off on the frame where the factory shock mounts, and they added 2 tabs, and then there's a through bolt. And then did the same thing on the rear. They cut the box off of the frame and mounted the shock, with a through bolt on 2 tabs. In order to do that on the front, they actually cut the fiberglass away. So when you open the hood and pull the carpet back, you can see the top of the shock and top of the spring poking through.
Big holes in your tub there.
Yeah, so I don't drive in the rain with stuff in there. I don't want to get wet.
Right. That's awesome. Sincerely, it's just so shockingly low when I saw it a year ago, and now you've raised it a couple inches?
Yeah, I've since replaced the shocks and springs actually just recently as well with modern QA1 brand components. So now I have adjustable shocks, front and rear, so I can dial in the stiffness. And I went to a lot softer rear spring rate. The car, when I got it, was set up with a really stiff rear spring. I mean, it was really bouncy. All the suspension was basically in the tire, which is really wobbly because it's such a big balloon-like tire.
Yeah.
With the 295 on the 15. It was just way too stiff. It was, you're bouncing around like crazy. So I've since gone to half the spring rate in the rear, but I'm still way low below what factory rates are because my geometry is so different.
Yeah.
My shocks are way more upright than they are factory. Normally they're angled a little bit on a normal car. Mine are like straight up and down. Like in the rear, because of the wide tire and because everything's narrowed up, my spring and shock is basically straight up and down and a half an inch from the frame and a half an inch from the tire. There's just no room. So if you're looking at your car at home and you're underneath and you see 6 inches of space, I don't have that. It's all real close. The other thing is, like when you came over and you said, oh, it's really low, I can't, like you said, your fist. If you can't put a pop can under my frame. You can only get
by a lot,
like 3/4 of the pop can maybe, and that was it.
Yeah,
it was that low. So it would scrape going into my driveway.
Yeah.
Just the roads around the Bay Area are pretty rough. Some pretty big dips on the highway. So when I put new shocks on, I went to a taller one so I could get a little more ride height out of it. So it's a little safer for the car and a little more compliant.
Yeah.
A little more suspension travel.
Well, and you're not going to rip out the underside of the car or the fascia, the rear front fascia.
Right, yeah. Like I said, I wanted to protect it, but I also wanted to make it a little bit nicer to drive too, so it wasn't so rough. One of the issues the car had when I got it was the CV axle boots were all torn up. And that was, I think, caused by the severe angle of the axle because the car was sitting so low. So normally the axle should be straight, horizontal across. Mine were, up at a 30-degree angle, which puts a lot more stress on the axles.
Yeah.
And on the outers, because everything's so close again, the boot was actually hitting the frame. So when you hit a big bump, the axle would actually hit the frame. Things were that close together. So that's what you get with a custom hand-built car,
Yeah.
modified car like that. You give up some things in order to get the look.
Right. And it is a
So-
great look. Talking about going back to the wheels and tires, you'd shown me that you had some new parts made for the offset, right? For the offset of the tires,
Yeah.
the rims.
When I got the car, the way the wheels are made, they're a custom-made set. They were made by Hal Pantera. They're a similar design to what they were selling for Panteras at the time. But this is a one-off set specifically made for this car.
Oh.
And the only set they made.
Wow, I thought they were Pantera rims.
They look like Pantera rims, but the Pantera rims were a different bolt pattern, and they were a 17-inch, and mine are a 15-inch.
Wow.
So they're a one-off set, which makes me kind of nervous because they're the only set, but so be it.
Deal with that problem when you get there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're pretty cool that way. It's a three-piece wheel. So you have an inner barrel and an outer barrel with the center sandwiched in between. Recently, in prep for a show, I had them completely disassembled, polished, had the centers re-anodized, so I completely restored the wheels.
Oh, wow.
I had some small leaks too because the sealant had failed over the years.
Yeah.
So I had those refurbished and put back on the car. Now they're great. But what you had mentioned, I had new spacers machined. The car came with the factory little 3mm spacer for the rear wheel, and then an additional 10mm or so one in there. And when you'd go to put the wheel on, it would never line up, and it wasn't hub centric or anything. So I had a nice custom one machined up, and it fits a lot better now.
Those are impressive as it is. Just looking at that photo. So, and I didn't know what hub centric was, so I had to ask you. And it helps you center when you put the rim onto the hub.
Right, it's an alignment feature that allows when you put the wheel on the hub, everything lines up. And you're not relying on the bolts,
bolt
to
patterns
center the wheel on the hubs. That way, you don't get vibrations and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned some of the other modifications I've made. The handmade suspension components, like the rear upper and lower links they put on the car when they built it in '83, were smaller than the stock DeLorean stuff and a little weaker. So I decided to strengthen them and go a little bit bigger. So for the lower, I actually purchased a set of used factory lower arms, put new bushings in, cut them in half, took about 6 inches out or 3 inches out, and then I installed Rob Grady's adjuster links into those. So I'm now running a factory DeLorean lower link, but it's a lot shorter, and now it's fully adjustable.
And adjustable.
Yeah, and I can adjust it on the car because it's a left and right thread rather than having to disassemble it, spin it, put it all back together.
Right.
So it's a lot easier to adjust the alignment now.
And you've spent some time tweaking it. You were talking about you'd put it up on blocks, you'd measure everything, you'd make adjustments, you go out and drive it, come back.
Yeah, and that was to try to get the ride height nice and level and at a stance and a new, how high the front is, how high the rear is, at a level that I was comfortable with for driving, but also kind of maintained the look of how the car was produced originally.
Right.
And I did that. I had to do that after having put on all new suspension and having refreshed some of the parts. Because when I first put it all back together, it was a little bit
wonky.
offset. The front left corner was too low.
Yeah.
So that was just a bit of trial and error of, lifting it up, take the wheels off, adjust the new suspension. The new shocks have a threaded body with 2 locking collars, like a traditional coilover, so I can adjust the ride height independently on all 4 corners.
Yeah. Are you all done with your tweaking now? It's been a couple of months since you finished all this rework in June, July of 2018.
Right.
And here it is, beginning of November. Are you done tinkering? Or do you still have more to do?
No, there's still much more to do. It never stops. A few more suspension tweaks here and there. I just recently rebuilt the steering rack. The steering had some play in it, so I purchased the DIY rebuild kit from Rob Grady and refinished the exterior of the rack as well. New paint and all that. Put new tie rod ends on. I did a home alignment with some aluminum bars because I didn't have the cool rig that you can mount to your wheel.
Right.
That's on the Christmas list. Just, so I could take it to some shows, some Cars and Coffee events recently, and actually got it pretty close. So it's driving good now. I can take it on the road. I got a few more little adjustments to make on the front end, and then I'll take it to a real alignment shop and really get it dialed in so it drives good.
Unless it's secret, what other stuff do you want to do to the car?
Just general restoration work.
Not particularly the customization that was done in the early 80s.
I don't want to affect the originality of this car in any way, especially visually.
Yeah.
One thing that's really great about it, and I was really happy to find the car in such good condition. It's got 15,000 miles on it. So it was driven in I think in period, most of those miles. The prior owner had it in a private collection for 30-something years, since the mid-'80s. And I don't think it got used a lot, although I don't really know. I don't really have good records on that. So it's not got a ton of miles on it. I was just super happy to find the car and find that it hadn't been neglected and everything.
Right.
So like we said, it's beautiful, and it really is. The paint has really survived well, and the stainless is in great shape.
Yeah.
But so is the interior. The interior is all original. The seats are not torn. The carpets are nice and clean. The dash is not cracked.
And
the binnacle's in good shape.
And it's got tinted windows, and it's a black interior, so...
The windows are not tinted.
Oh, they're not?
No, they're not.
Oh, so, again, I only saw the car in person that one time, but, man, it is like a black hole looking through the window. It is so dark in there.
Just, you take it to events, you pop the doors open, and people that don't know DeLoreans, and you say it's got 15,000 miles on it, they're like, what? That's crazy. And it's like, well, that's kind of common,
Right.
for DeLoreans to have low miles. Just the interior's in such great shape.
Yeah.
So really what I'm focusing on is the mechanicals. And that's what I really like doing as well.
Yeah.
With cars I have owned or currently still own, other cars, is the mechanical restoration work. So just going through, 30, 40-year-old stuff underneath. It's got all new brakes now, new calipers front and rear. It's had a master done. It's got all new fuel system in it. It's got a 134 air conditioning system in it.
Were the brakes all still stock? I mean, with
it's all stock.
Okay.
It's,
with all that custom work, it almost seemed, and custom rims and the whole bit. It seems like they might have replaced that, but that's all still original.
Most of the custom work done on the car is I'd say probably 90% of the work done is for style and for looks, not so much performance. However, it did have an aftermarket handmade exhaust on it originally, and per the magazine article, which is actually a really good source of records for me, it does mention that they did some head work.
Really?
Maybe just in cams or flowing the heads or whatever. But I've not opened up the engine to verify any of that.
I was going to say, have you checked to see if they're the original cams or not?
I don't
have
know.
not. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Everything, I did have the covers off to clean them up and take care of some leaks and things that the car had when I got it. And everything looks really nice and clean under there. So
wow, nice.
It's had some cosmetic work done to the engine to clean it up a little bit. I got orange fuel lines, and all the little clips like on the engine cover, the clips that hold the grills in are all powder coated orange
underneath. Did you do that?
No, the prior owner that I got it from did that work. And actually, it looks really cool. It's like I'm still undecided whether it's something I want to keep or
please keep that.
Do I want to go back to like original and make it look like it would if it was brand new out of the factory.
The car is already so customized, and if you don't know what we're talking about, it's so when you raise your engine, not the louvers, but the engine cover, the engine cover has all those grates in it, but the clips that hold those screens, those are the things that are orange. So when I see in the pictures of your car with the engine cover open, it makes it stand out just that much more. Not that I have a vote, but leave those in because that looks great. And it matches the orange stripe on the car.
Yeah, and it's got the stainless coolant bottle, and it's got, it's got the modern things you'd want to have.
Yeah.
It's got the modern fuel lines on it, and a modern alternator. It's got a DPI exhaust on it right now.
And so you replaced the original handmade exhaust.
That was done. Apparently, it rusted out because it was just regular steel. So the guy I got it from had taken it off and put the DPI on it with the work he did to get the car roadworthy again after coming out of the collection.
Got it.
So it's got some custom engine work, but chassis-wise, it's like you said, the brakes are stock. I just put all new stuff on and refresh it all.
Got it. Good. So I know that you took the car to Radwood.
Yeah, Radwood, San Francisco in June of this year. When the first Radwood came out the prior year, that's when I had just found out about that event. And for those that don't know, Radwood is a car show that's for 80s and 90s cars only, and that's any kind of car from your Fleetwood convertible to your Toyota pickup or Toyota van to whatever. Anything goes as long as it's 80s and 90s and it's cool.
I think I was talking to maybe Ryan Foster recently about that so many of these car shows are 79 and older. And then we get excluded because we're not that. And it kind of fits, right? We don't belong really parked next to a 57 Chevy or some beautiful classic car. I don't know how many car shows there are that are 80s and 90s.
Yeah, it's a great niche that the guys that are running that event have got going. And they just recently, they did an LA event last year and then came back to San Francisco this past year in June. So after I got the car, I'm like, oh, I got to take it to Radwood. That's going to be like my big unveiling show.
Yeah.
Right? Because it really had been out of the public eye for years and years.
Well, and in fact, the car wasn't even in California when you found it.
No, it was in Indiana.
So 30 plus years in a private collection in Indiana.
Yeah, it disappeared.
Yeah, just gone.
I think a lot of newer DeLorean owners had never even seen the photo before.
Yeah.
Because it just hadn't.
Other than that article.
Yeah. You know, and I know on Tamir's site, he had a lot of different magazine articles.
Covers.
And I'm sure a lot of us DeLorean enthusiasts have all gone there and seen and read some of the old articles, and it's there. And that's where I had originally found it, too, after thinking,
years later.
But it's funny, because when I got my first DeLorean that we were talking about before, I was sure I had that magazine still. So I remember going in my garage and digging through all my old boxes of car magazines to try to find the one with that DeLorean in it.
Awesome.
The car that I now own, which is crazy.
That's my favorite part of that story, that you see a car at 10-ish years old, and then you buy it 30 years later.
Yeah. And then just the other day, I was going through an old computer, and I was pulling off all my old pictures from the prior car because I wanted some photos of things I had done to that one that I then wanted to do to this one. And I found a photo of that, a screen print of that magazine article in my old DeLorean photo album, and it's like, there's that car again. So I had once thought that if the car never surfaced, I would never find. Maybe I'd try to recreate it.
Right. You'd mentioned that, and I thought that's interesting because the paint job was unique enough. I'm guessing you really wanted to recreate that paint job, not necessarily the crazy suspension.
Well, that was always the thing. Was like, well, how am I going to do that? Because
you didn't know how they'd done it.
No, I didn't know how I'd done it. I didn't know what was done. I didn't know what the wheels were or what brand they were or anything. Or, I had that one photo from the magazine, and not even all the pictures in the magazine are in color. And I thought, anyways, when I found the car then last year, I actually was on a business trip, and on my way back home, I stopped off in Indiana and met with the guy that had it. He invited me to his place, and I got to see the car because I figured that was my only opportunity to maybe see it in person. Is like this car that was the one for me back in the day. So I brought the magazine along, and I got a picture of it. I mean, how dorky can you get, right? But I didn't know, if it would ever be for sale at the time, or and I just assumed that, if it was for sale, it would go overseas, or it would be something I couldn't afford. And really, I wasn't in a place where I could buy another car, another classic car. I already had a Porsche that I had for several years, and there wasn't really space.
Yeah.
But over the next few months, we kept in touch, and the opportunity actually came up where I could buy the car. And after several conversations with my wife, she's like, "It's your dream car. I know this is a one-time shot. Go ahead." And I was like,
I won't ask for anything for Christmas or for my birthday this year.
Pretty much. But anyways, we made a deal and had the car trucked home.
That's awesome.
It was really awesome. And then that week, I got the car home. That weekend, I took it to a car show at a golf course down the street. I didn't even have plates or anything on it. I just like, I'm going to this car show. I don't care.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely check out the photos. Ownership succession. I for some reason, I personally find this interesting. 10515, my car, I bought from the first owner. And I thought that was kind of unique, but over the last year or so, I keep talking to other people that have also bought their cars from first owners, which I kind of like that. Nothing against cars that have been passed around by 5, 10, 50 different people. You think you're about the fourth owner, is that right?
Yeah, I think so. From what I've been able to find, obviously Skip was the original owner and the original purchaser. From there, I think the car went to this private collection in Indiana. I've been told that the original owner of the collection passed away, and it went to his son, and then the son had the collection for a period of time, and then decided within the last 2 years or whatever to start thinning out the collection and maybe getting different things, and the DeLorean was one of the cars to pass on to the next guy.
Nice. And now you're the caretaker.
And now and for the foreseeable future.
Yes.
I'm not letting this one go.
No. So you had to bring it back to California, A lot of people like especially on that car, since the bottom half is black. Did you do the black plate, the black California plate?
Yep, I did. I did go for the black plate. I figured that was a no-brainer with a half black painted car.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the letter's in yellow and not in orange. I'm kind of liking everything in orange these days. One of my old Volkswagens was bright green, so I was kind of known for the color green for a while. But now I'm switching to orange. I showed you some of the pictures on my phone earlier of some of the plates I was trying to, the personalized plates. I mean, who has a DeLorean that doesn't have? Well, you don't.
I know. And
I have a
there's
personalized
a fair number,
plate.
yeah.
But there's definitely a lot of different personalized plates.
The reason why I haven't done the personalized plate is because they only had for 4 years in California, and it's the sunset across the top of the plate.
Right.
I've always loved that plate. Even as a kid, I remember I loved that plate before I was ever into DeLoreans. So when I bought this car, it has the sunset plate on it. You can't recreate them. DMV doesn't put those out anymore. So that was the reason why I have not gotten a custom plate. There's also a law in California that you have to have a front and rear plate. The first owners only had the rear plate. So if/when that day comes and I'm forced to get a front plate, I'm either going to have to spend a bunch of money paying for a custom plate and just match to AWA 057, which means nothing, so that I have a front plate, or I'm just going to go do a custom plate. And I've given zero thought to what I would put on a plate. Obviously, lots of people do, and this is where I'm at, where I'm headed for you. This is your dream car for 30 plus years. You finally got it. What did you think about first, and then what did you go with?
I thought of a couple different things. I like new wave electronic music, so one of the things I was thinking of was to try to do the words new wave, because I think the car kind of had the vibe from that period too, the 80s, and it was kind of, funky. But that wasn't available, so I could try to do the new with a U, but then it looked too German, and then if you think about the colors on the car, it's actually an upside down German flag, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but I was like, all right, no, I'm not going to do that one. And then I thought, shorten it, do with 81 on the end. I was like, I don't like really that one enough. And then I thought about doing B4 BTTF, because the car was custom and built in 83. This was all before Back to the Future.
Yep.
Even the magazine that I saw was 84, so that's even Back to the Future. So I didn't really want to do any references to Back to the Future. Not on this car, but I wanted something that was unique to the car.
Yeah.
So I thought about doing Mongoose, because it's kind of known for that. And also for another little tidbit for those that haven't seen the car, there's actually a Mongoose decal on the front windshield. That's original, and it's slightly faded, but it's it's got the Rider's Choice logo, and it's period correct.
Right.
Sticker on the windshield. So I thought about doing the Mongoose, but it didn't quite fit. It was either Mongoose or MON Goose, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. But I settled on finally on one rad DMC, because that's what it is. It's the only one like it. So that signifies the number one. And then just one rad DMC, because everybody walks up to it and they're like, man, that's rad.
That's rad.
So
you did skip over something with Radwood.
Right. So I did the Radwood show in June, and like I said, I was doing all kinds of work to the car to get ready for Radwood. Not only the suspension work, but refinishing the wheels. I polished all the paint and had a lot of water spots and stuff on it, some scratches for over the years. And I was lucky enough to have Mr. Chris Nicholson come and regrain all the stainless, so it really looked really good. I took it to Radwood. I was like one of the first cars there, of course, and got the car on the grass and did the show. And I was just awesome, happy to be there. Didn't think I'd win anything or anything. Turns out, at the end of the show, at the end of the day, I won Raddest of them all.
Raddest of them all.
That's what I call it. It was like the Best in Show award for Radwood, San Francisco. So.
And that's incredible, because I've never been, but I can imagine an 80s, 90s car show. There's a lot of competition there.
Yeah, there was some really cool 80s cars there, but the organizers liked the story, obviously helped. And I had the magazine. I got to tell them the story of how I saw it when I was a kid. And it just screams 80s. I mean, the car just is so period correct looking.
Yep.
With the graphics and the stripes down the side and the stance and the fact that it's a DeLorean.
Right. That in itself.
So
a year ago when I came to visit you, you had a binder with the magazine and some old photos in there, and I thought that was a pretty cool story too, because once you got the car, you started kind of reverse engineering the history, and you'd mentioned at the beginning of the show about going to that Pantera shop, but
Right.
the photos that they gave you,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool
What
too.
a surprise that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like you said, some of the research I was doing was to try to put together the rest of the story that happened since the magazine. The magazine was a really good resource for me about what was done and who the players were. I was able to contact the builder's son and speak to him on the phone. I connected with the artist that did the graphics design on the side of the car. I spoke with him on the phone for a while. He actually didn't remember the car. I had to send him an email with a photo. And I don't blame him. I mean, I'm sure he did thousands of work for different people in that time. But once he saw the photo, he's like, oh yeah, I remember that car. That was really cool. Luckily, the car came with the original bill of sale with Skip's name and signature on it from a Cadillac dealer in Stockton. I have the original invoice for all the custom work. And it came with a stack of Wing magazines from the mailers that went, and they're all to Skip's address. I have his business card. I have his club member card with his name on it. So knowing that how Pantera did the work on the car, when I was on the business trip here in LA, previously I knocked on their door one day and walked in. They're like, "Hi, I'm so and so. I'm from SoCal or from NorCal," and I showed them a picture of the car on my phone. I'm like, "Do you remember this car?" And the lady behind the counter, she's like, "No," but she calls her mom from the back. Her mom comes around, and I show her the photo, and she's like, "Oh yeah, those are our wheels." And I was like, "Really? That's cool. I didn't know that." And we had a nice conversation about the relationship they had with Skip. And then I asked, I was like, "So do you have any old records or anything buried away upstairs?" And she's like, "Oh, let me go check." I was like,
amazing.
Wow, this could be cool. Anyways, a couple minutes go by. She comes downstairs with 6 photos.
Prints,
like from 1983 of the car, basically the day it was done in the parking lot.
Incredible.
And 4 different angles. 2 of the photos were the same, so they kept those. They gave me the other 4.
That's amazing.
So I got to add those to my file. They're great because, you look in the background, you see Panteras, you see old Volkswagens, you see a guy sanding a car with knee-high socks and this Pinto wagon, and it's just so cool. And there's this really cool DeLorean sitting
right there, fresh paint job in 1983.
Yeah. And at the same stance, really low in the back.
Yeah.
Just like it was when I got it.
Awesome story. If you won Best in Show at Radwood last year, are you going to go again next year? And are you going to try to get NorCal DeLorean Club to go as kind of an event?
I don't have any plans right now to go again next year. I think shows like that like to have some
fresh blood
each year.
Yeah.
I know a lot of Concours events that I've attended. If you place, you don't typically get to come back for a couple years because they want fresh cars every year. So a couple of our other NorCal members have went to Radwood in the past. Next year is just continue the progress of the restoration, make the car drive properly and run properly and safely, and get it out and show it and take it to. I like going to Cars and Coffee events and start doing more DeLorean events with the other members.
Awesome. Now that you have the car, does your wife enjoy? Have you taken her out to dinner or whatever in it?
Actually, we just went. We haven't gone out to dinner, but we finally, for the first time, she came with me to a Cars and Coffee just the last weekend.
Is she as enamored with the lowered and the paint job as you are?
She likes the car. I would say that she knows I love the car, so she's really happy about that. She sees the excitement and the enjoyment I get out of it.
Nice.
So,
nice.
I have a really awesome wife. So.
Good. Fantastic story. Since I met you last year, I just love that inception moment from being 10 years old, seeing a magazine story, and then buying the exact car from the magazine story 30 years later. I've told other people that, so I'm really glad that you joined me and that you can share the story. The car really is beautiful. Check out the pictures. If you are in the Bay Area, Northern California area, track down some other members of the NorCal Club and find out when they're going to do something and get together with them and meet up, and maybe you'll be lucky enough to get Mark to bring the car out.
Yeah, if you're ever traveling through the NorCal area on business, pleasure, whatever, and you want to hook up with one of us, just like you did, Dave, one time you came by, you gave me a call. Yeah, please do that. We'd love to meet you. And thanks very much for having me on the show.
Thank you. So the last question I ask people, in fact, I met another new owner here in Orange County just in the last week or so. He had already listened to DeLorean Talk, and I opened my trunk to get something, and he laughed and he goes, "That's why you ask everybody what's in your trunk, because my trunk has way too much junk in it." So your car is beautiful. It's you've just been doing all the work on it. What is in the trunk of your car?
Well, I came prepared because I knew you were going to ask this question, because I have listened to all your shows. Right now, I took a look even before I left. I have 2 chairs that I use for car. It's all car show stuff. So I have 2 chairs. I think I have some bottles of water. And I have my plexi headlight covers.
All right. Well, thanks again, Mark. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again up there or down here in LA.
Yeah.
One of these days, if your work schedule here in LA coincides with some event that the Orange County DeLorean Club's doing, I hope you'll join us.
I'd love to.
Great.
And thanks for taking me to Lone Pine Mall.
Lone Pine Mall. Yeah, we're sitting in the parking lot at Lone Pine Mall. There's now a 24-hour fitness instead of a JCPenney. So I have been here many times at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there are 50 cars in the parking lot. You cannot get a good picture at this mall ever anymore. So, okay, well, everybody, thanks again for joining DeLorean Talk. Please do spread the word so that we can get more people excited and interested, get more people to come out to the community, get their cars out of the garages and back on the road. Again, I'd love to get more DeLorean Club leaders around the world to join me on a phone call and talk about your club, what you're doing, what works, what could be done better, and to do a little advertising. So maybe someone will find out that you exist and can come join your club. Drive safe, everybody, and take care.